Hi everyone. I can see a couple people trickling in from the lobby, but we've only got about half an hour. So I'm going to start. Hi everyone, my name is Malika. I'm from Success at School, and you are joining us for a session all about law today and law apprenticeships. We are being joined by Jordan and John Danielle, who are some amazing solicitor apprentices who are also your mentors on our Ask an Apprentice community, which they will be discussing shortly. So I'm just going to pass over to Mitesh, who is going to be hosting this session. Just so that you guys are aware, this webinar will be recorded and shared with you post the meeting, so you can rewatch it as many times as you like. And yes, just going to pass it over to Mitesh now. Thank you.
Thank you, Malika. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Ask an Apprentice Law Edition. As Malika mentioned, Jean Danielle and Jordan are mentors on our Ask an Apprentice platform. So, what we've decided to do is ask them the questions you've been asking. We're going to go through some of the questions we've been asked on the law community, and it's split into things you should know at school and college, a bit about the application, and a bit about life as a lawyer. If you have any questions during the session, please ask them in the Q&A section or in the booth, and we'll try and answer some of them at the end. So to kick things off, I'm going to ask Jordan and John Danielle to introduce themselves. Please tell them a little bit about yourselves, about your journey, and what you're currently doing. So Jordan, can I ask you to start?
Yep. Hello, everyone. My name is Jordan, and I am currently in my final year of my solicitor apprenticeship. I'm from Mid Wales, so at the start of my apprenticeship, I did work at a firm in Birmingham, but then in lockdown, I thought quite want to move back home, so I transferred my apprenticeship to a smaller, more local firm to me in Mid Wales, and I'm currently doing commercial property and corporate law.
Thank you, Jordan. John Danielle.
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm John Daniel. I'm in my fourth year at my law firm, and uh, I'm currently in the commercial dispute resolution department. I'm probably hoping to qualify here, but I'll see as time goes on. I'm based in London, and I pretty much will continue to be at this law firm at the end of my apprenticeship.
Thank you very much. Thank you for those intros. So actually, we've probably got a lot of people like thinking about doing a solicitor apprenticeship, or maybe they're not sure. One of the questions we've been asked previously is, what's the first step to getting into law? Um, Sean Daniel, what was your first step into getting into law?
So my very first step, although I wouldn't advise it per se, but my very first step was just sending out a series of applications. So I sent out a series of applications to various different law firms. I think maybe about 5 to 10 in total, if memory serves me correctly. I would always encourage everyone, however, to your very first step should actually be to assess what your primary motives are as to why you want to get into law. Especially if it's commercial, I'd say, be motivated by prestige, status, money. It can bode well, those could be good motivators, but I found that by and large, many people who have gone in exclusively for those reasons, it never really does well as a first step. So um, getting work experience, I guess for me, that was also quote unquote a first step. Um, I think we're going to go into this a bit much more later, but you'll find that there's two types of work experience. So there's a type where you're mainly just doing this work experience to show and to just grow in your passion and your affinity for the law. So that might be anything to do with going working at Linklaters for a bit, or any other law firm, whatever the case is. Going to court cases, mooting. But then there's also the second type of work experience, which is just growing and just honing those skills that are necessary to actually be a successful candidate as a solicitor apprentice. So I would say if you just focus on getting good work experience that shows you have a love for the law and grows that skill set, then you're pretty much in a good place to say, I'm going in the right direction.
Thank you, John Danielle. Jordan, can you add to that?
I feel like I wasn't really 100% sure if I wanted to do law specifically or not. I think when I was taking my GCSEs, I was quite sporty and I thought, oh, maybe something, down that path might take me. But when we sort of got to sixth form and it came to, you've really got to choose your options now, I really loved history and I really thought perhaps a career to do with history is something for me. And perhaps in those early sort of months in sixth form where they open up the university days, you can go and have a look around. I was going to a lot of the history talks and I just stumbled across a lecturer that also that offered, I think it was in Aberystwyth, they offered history and law. And I listened to the law lecture and I thought, oh my God, this, yeah, this is for me. But I knew that I didn't really want to go to university in the traditional route. So I spoke to someone I knew from my local gym that was a solicitor just to sort of see what it was all about, really, what she actually did day to day, because a lot of the law that you see on the telly isn't what you do in practice. So I had a couple of conversations with her, and she had mentioned that they were starting back when I was sort of applying for my roles. There wasn't many apprenticeship opportunities available, so I think there's something like 10 or 12 firms offering the apprenticeship scheme. But she told me about it, and then I went away from that and sort of got into a deep, dark black hole on Google on, what is this apprenticeship? What can I do? And I started on the paralegal apprenticeship because again, the solicitor apprenticeship wasn't really that well spoken about. So the first step really was probably deciding, did I definitely want to do it or not? And I think that was probably guided by exploring other options. So like, for example, going to the university show round day and deciding, yes, I quite like the law lecture, but I definitely didn't want to go to university in the traditional way. And just really speaking to people. So like the Success at School platform is a really good opportunity. You can speak to people about what it's really like, and just sort of grounding really whether it is something that you're interested in or not.
Thank you very much. You guys have both touched on some questions that are like follow-up questions. So I'm going to stay with you, Jordan, for a minute. And you said that you were studying history, and that led you down the pathway to law in the end,
Hmm.
slightly accidentally, but led you there. Um, one of the questions we've had is, do A-level choices matter for a law apprenticeship? And you know, do I need to have law A-level, for example, to become a lawyer?
I mean, short answer, no. I don't have an A level in law. I had absolutely no experience in law before I started my apprenticeship. I couldn't even get work experience in law before I started my apprenticeship. I think with A levels, it's a fine balance between doing something that you really enjoy because the marks come with something that you enjoy because you naturally try harder and doing something that is credible for university slash apprenticeship providers. So I think the sort of grade boundary was like three Bs when I was applying. I'm not 100% sure if they're higher, lower, about the same now, but they were reasonable. They're not asking you to be, triple A star students. And I took history, psychology, and art. And you could probably argue that my art A level has was not needed for me at all, but it was something that I really enjoyed and I got a good mark in it. So in sort of the UCAS points and the what grades did you get, I do think that that does play quite a big part in doing something that you enjoy. I found history was very helpful because you get into the routine of sort of essay writing, really memorizing dates, which I found is really important when it comes to legal exams. There's a lot of case law and statute to remember that sort of flips you back into that history mindset of when did that happen. Um, but yeah, I didn't actually have any experience and I didn't do law A level. It wasn't offered at my school. And I found that when we actually started university at the beginning of our apprenticeship, they weren't really that bothered whether you'd studied law at A level or not, because you tend to repeat the key modules in that first year of university anyway. So it's probably a bit of a helping hand if you want to get that step ahead, but it's not major if you haven't.
Thank you, Jordan. John Daniel, I'm not asking you for as comprehensive as an answer, but can you tell us what you did for your A levels, just so the audience here know what you took?
Yeah, I did history, politics, and philosophy and theology ethics. So, but I think everything Jordan said is absolutely correct. It's perfectly accurate. Yeah,
Um,
quite good.
what I want to touch with you, Jean Daniel, is a question that we've got about work experience. That you mentioned work experience in your opening, answer. How would you recommend someone goes about getting legal work experience?
Yeah, I think things may have slightly changed, but one thing which I did, and I think this is still very much a good route to go down, but you'd want to reach out to as many organizations who offer like a range of work experiences. So I signed up to the Amos Bursary. I also did the Social Mobility Foundation. But these are just essentially charities that just help people who come from like lower social mobility rankings and place them in professional settings. So if you can find yourself in, applying in such an arena, then I'd say you've got a pretty good leg up into actually getting good work experience. Alternatively, you could just email like a series of high street law firms. So the ones that tend to be smaller. No guarantee that you get a response, but I do think, if you are showing a level of persistence, you probably will not be turned down. So, and of course, it doesn't need to just be exclusively law firms. It doesn't need to just be exclusively legal work. It could just be any kind of work where the skill set is being cultivated, which you can of course transpose when you're actually filling out the application.
Thank you, Jean Daniel. So just following that question, we've been talking about A levels. You may or may not know the answer to this, but can you start a law or some sort of legal apprenticeship if you leave school at 16 after GCSEs? Jordan, you mentioned paralegal. Is it possible to start a paralegal apprenticeship at 16? Do you know?
I don't know. When I was applying, no, you did have to have either, it was level 3, which I believe is equivalent to A level. So I think you could
Hmm.
have, if you were in college, or done like a diploma, something like that, that was okay. I don't think it's changed. I'm sure it was to do with you basically had to have the equivalent UCAS points. So if you were applying to
Yeah.
uni, you'd need a certain amount of UCAS points, and for apprenticeship, you needed certain amount of UCAS points or what it transferred into either grades or certificate.
Jean Daniel, do you know any different?
Yeah, I mean, no, I think from my understanding, it was always after A levels. However, I kind of know of few people who they've just done the paralegal route, and then from there they've moved on to the either solicitor apprenticeship route or just moved around into other fields and then done the training contracts. But yeah, you absolutely do not necessarily need A levels.
Okay, thank you very much. So I'm going to move on to sort of the application process, and legal apprenticeships are probably quite hard to get into. Um, maybe you can start. Maybe you guys can both just share like how you made your application stand out when you were applying. Um, Sean Daniel on my screen, so you can maybe answer that first.
Yeah, sure thing. I would always insist that applicants are people who have developed a habitual reading and writing practice. I think if you are someone, it's not necessarily about what you're saying, but it's more so about how you're saying it. So, there will be thousands of applicants who will say, and will probably even have more experience or more things to say than you. But if you are able to say, I possess great commercial awareness, I'm resilient and hardworking, um, and all these other things that they're looking for, but you say it in a manner that is engaging, um, then you are more likely to stand out the question now is, how do you actually, stand out with your writing? I would say looking into just persuasive writing techniques. You also want to almost kind of like build up like a vision in the reader's mindset. The reason that's why I say that, I remember that this is almost 5 years ago. Someone I was doing an application with, they mentioned how they were involved in scuba diving. Now, most 18-year-olds, don't care or don't do scuba diving, but something like that, that stands out automatically. What kind of 18-year-old does scuba diving? And then across these thousands of applications, something like that is going to be quickly understood and appreciated by whoever's reviewing it. So things like that, I think, really do go a long way. It is good, of course, to have work experience, but I do think primarily it's more so not what you say, but how you say it that really does stick out in a person's mind.
Thank you, Jordan. What about your experience? I know it's a little while ago, but I'm sure it's invaluable nonetheless.
To be honest, I agree with everything John Daniel just said. I think it can be really easy with applications to get lost in the like verbatim of what you're applying for, when really the person on the other end just wants to see a person. So I found with mine that I would be quite personal in what I was writing, and in the same way as drawing in on my skills. And like, for example, I didn't have any legal work experience, so I mentioned things in there about the fact I was a swimming teacher and I had good time management because I could manage a class of 6 5-year-olds. And I remember I got through to an assessment centre with Coca-Cola, and the feedback I had was that they had remembered me from the fact that I was a swimming teacher. So I do think that there is definitely merit in sort of showing your personality and your like traits and attributes in the application that makes you seem less like ChatGPT might have wrote it for you, and that you're an actual person at the other end of the screen. I think the other thing that's really important is that commercial awareness and personability to the firm. I know now there's so many firms that offer the apprenticeship route, so you might be doing like 20, 30 applications and you get a bit lost and muddled. It really does pay to sort of know the firm. What are their values? If they've got a slogan, what's on their website? Do they have, some people have like, oh, I've got 5 Cs, or they've got some sort of little propaganda or memorandum associated with their brand. If you can really hone in on, the firm, this is why you want to work for them, and you almost end up, coming across to the interviewer or whoever's reviewing your application that you've really done your research on them. I think that is another really important thing, because then the person who's reviewing your application doesn't just think, yep, this is the, X amount of applications that you've submitted. Yeah, it is difficult, but I think if you can be, honest and personal, it'll get you quite far.
Thank you, guys. We've probably answered 2 or 3 questions there. So we had a question on extracurricular activities, and you both answered them really well. Sean Daniel mentioned scuba diving. Jordan, you mentioned like teaching swimming, and I think the takeaway is mention the things that you do that can help you stand out, but make them relatable. Do the application that you're applying for, and people will remember you. Moving on to the next question. We've got a question here which says, is there a big difference between phone/video interviews and face-to-face interviews? I'm going to go back to Jean Danielle on this one first. And yeah, what are your thoughts on that, Jean Danielle?
Yeah, I think with phone interviews, they tend to be quite difficult because you're being primarily, of course, your answer, but also just like we can't really gauge too much of your emotion, how you are feeling. And so I think when it comes to face-to-face interviews, or even just video interviews, which tend to be far more intimate, far more personal, the person that is going to be interviewing you will be able to kind of gauge the person you are from your body language, from your gestures, and you'll probably find, that you could perform better in those circumstances. It kind of feels like I'm really speaking to a person in that instance. Whereas when you're on the phone, it can kind of feel a bit more robotic, a bit more disconnected. So yeah, I'd say, in those circumstances, if possible, I know some firms probably do raise the question as to which one you prefer to do. If you have an option to exercise that, then I'd always encourage people to just either go for a face-to-face interview, really get to know what the firm is like, what their culture is like, even the person you're interviewing, how they are like, and really just try to get a proper taste and ingrain yourself there, integrate yourself in there as much as possible.
Thank you. Jordan, do you have more to add to that? Or what was your experience?
Probably similar, to be honest. I do find that the telephone interviews, they feel less formal, but I think you can't be as informal. So like for example, an interview, I think when you're face to face sat opposite someone, you can almost try and relate to them, or try and show a personality, whereas it's quite hard to do that on the phone. But I do find that it seems less intense on the phone. You almost feel less nervous. You're not sat there in your suit waiting to be grilled by someone. But I do find the actual face-to-face interviews, they never end up feeling like you're being grilled by someone or anything like that. So yeah, I found when I was applying, and I do appreciate it was a long time ago now, but they did a bit of a mixture of both. So quite a few times we would have a phone interview first, and then it would follow up towards the end of the assessment centre process that you'd have a face-to-face.
Thank you. Yeah, no, I agree. I think like so, face to face, you can just feel more relatable. And people want to make you feel relaxed, so they don't want you to feel nervous. So they're not as necessarily as daunting as people think they are. Um, like this session is flying through, so I'm going to move on to like life as a lawyer. We had a question here which says, in the apprenticeship, does the company cover the cost of exams? I assume that's correct. You guys don't pay for your exams, do you?
No.
That's fine. And Jordan, I'll start with you. What does your typical day or week look like when you're as a law firm apprentice?
I have quite a good work-life balance, I'll be honest. So on a Monday is my designated study day. So that is normally treated like a work day, like a 9 to 5 still. It does tend to spill over, but that's probably just me. In my final year, sort of the workload's got a bit heavier. And then Tuesday to Friday, I'm working. So I do a couple of days in the office and I do a couple of days at home. My firm are really good with me, very flexible. So I have like study leave and things like that around exams as well. But yeah, day to day, I'm quite strict as well with my 9 to 5. It's rare that I go over. I know that's not the case for all firms, but I have quite a good work-life balance and I'm quite well supported at work with the tasks that I do.
Thank you. And Jean Daniel, what's it like for you?
Yeah, I think not too dissimilar from Jordan, to be honest. I think I would say so. My study day is on a Friday, but it has changed over the years. I've done it on a Wednesday as well. Um, I think you'd find that your week really just depends on which department you find yourself in. So some departments they might be just extremely busy all year round, and you're always busy. The current department I'm in right now, commercial dispute resolution, it just goes through periods of extreme busyness and then extreme quietness. So very good mix. I am, as Jordan mentioned as well, also very consistent with making sure that once it's closing time, I'm out of the office. I don't really like, staying longer unless I absolutely need to. So yeah, and on top of that, no week is really the same. I'd say. I know it's quite cliche to say that, but it's true. There's quite a lot of truth in that.
Thank you. The question we've had is how soon do you get to specialize? So during your apprenticeship, like, do you rotate around? Do you get to choose where you work? We'll stick with you, John Daniel, on this question. Actually, that's one of the questions we've had in the Q&A. So,
I think the answer would probably depend on whatever firm you're at. So I know some apprentices who have just done the exact same thing for the entire 6 years. In my firm, it is a rotation every single year. I know in the first year, you don't really get the first year and second year, you don't get really much of a choice as to where you're placed. Um, but then in the subsequent years, you can give a suggestion to HR, but they may not necessarily do exactly that. So it really does kind of depend. But yeah, you find yourself rotating for at least for the first 4 years. And then the last 2 years in your training contract in my firm, the way it works is you would rotate every 6 months. So from September to March, and then from March to September again. So every 6 months, you find yourself in a new department.
And Jordan, what was your experience? And you're coming towards the end of you're about to qualify soon. Are you going to go into a certain department? Are you going to go back into rotation?
I will specialise when I qualify. Where that's going to be yet? Really good question. I haven't quite decided. But yeah, I'm the same. My firm have let me rotate. Prior to that, though, the firm that I worked in Birmingham, there was no option to rotate, and it was partly one of the reasons why I wanted to move. Because a couple of friends that I'm still friends with from there, they have just been in the same department for the whole apprenticeship, which is fine. But I wanted to get some experience so I could be a bit choosy about where I want to work, and it helped me with exams, if I'm honest.
Thank you. So there's a couple of questions about salaries, and I'm probably just going to answer that. So I think the salary depends on where you apply. They'll be slightly different depending on the different organizations. So it's best to look at the organizations that you're applying for and seeing what they say their salaries are. There's a question here about the social aspect of being an apprentice. Do you get to socialize with other apprentices? Are they all your age? Are they different year groups? How big's your cohort? Maybe you can tell us a little about the interaction you have and with apprentices in your firm and stuff like that. Let's go back to Jordan for this one first.
I'd say my cohort's probably one of the smaller ones, but it's probably because I'm good few years in now and there wasn't many about. But yeah, we have a nice big WhatsApp group chat with all of us from uni on. We do get together every now and then. I'd say I'm probably not the best person to ask because I moved apprenticeships to my hometown. I'd say there's probably not an apprentice within probably a 20 or 30 mile radius from me. But there's still other trainees and people similar my age that work at my firm, so I don't feel like I'm missing out on the social aspect.
John Danielle?
Yeah, I'd second exactly that.
So John Daniel, we can't quite hear you on this one. If you could just, yeah.
Can you hear me now? Yeah.
It's still a little bit sort of muffled.
Is this any better or?
Yeah, much better.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I'd say pretty much the exact same thing as Jordan. I think when you're applying, you just kind of assume you're always going to be with other apprentices, but there are many trainees, especially if you're going to a larger London or international firm. So you are probably going to make really good friends or just get along really well with not just the apprentices, but just paralegals and the trainees and even some of the junior associates. So yeah, there is much opportunity to socialize. To be honest, the onus just falls on you as to how much you really want to make advantage out of it.
Thank you, guys. We've come to the end of the session. Thank you, Jean Danielle. Thank you, Jordan. I know there's some more questions we didn't get a chance to answer, but please go on to successatschool.org and sign up, and you can ask Jordan and Jean Danielle any questions you want. We've also got some videos on them where they've answered a whole load of questions. So if you want to learn a bit more about them, you can go to view their mentor profiles, and there's more mentors on there that you can view as well. Malika.
Yes, just to reiterate that this will be also recorded and shared with you so you can rewatch it for any advice. There was lots of great nuggets of information there, and Jordan and Jean Danielle are here to help you all the time. This is not the only time you get to meet them, which is really exciting. They're here to support you through every step of that journey. So all you need to do is head over to Ask an Apprentice and ask away. It's that simple. So thank you once again. We've got one more session today. So hopefully you can join us for that next one, which is starting at 2 o'clock. But otherwise, have a lovely rest of your day. And thank you again to the wonderful Jean-Danielle and Jordan, and of course, Smitesh as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Take care.
Thanks.